email update printed out because it's very concise, and I tend not to be. I have extra printouts of my latest email update out on the table by the front entrance. You're welcome to take one and read it. My work in Tanzania has kind of been over the past 7 years, so this is a very concise overview of what all has been happening over there. So yeah, I encourage you to pick one up. There are 20 copies, so I can make more if needed. My dad can make more if needed. So I moved to Tanzania.
I don't think that's true.
That mic's not on.
It's the little thing is green. Do I need to do anything else? I just need to get way closer?
Yeah.
Okay. So when I moved to Pennsylvania in 2007 or 2008, I started going to a Bible fellowship church, and about the third Sunday that I was there, they commissioned a couple to go to Tanzania with Africa Inland Mission, and I was very interested in doing that myself. I had been looking for what kind of overseas work I wanted to do, and this just kind of fell into my lap. It was over the next few years, I found out about an unreached people group called the Matumbi in South Coast Tanzania, which is in East Africa, just below Kenya. If you think of the armpit of Africa as being in your direction over here, we're over here, so the East Coast. In 2013, I was able to join a team from Africa Inland Mission and go for 3 years to live among this people group with the goal of learning the local oral language in year 1, and in year 2 working on some sort of community development project, and then in year 3 it was going to be the idea was that we would know enough language and be familiar enough with local culture to be able to start an oral Bible storying project. So that's what we did from 2013 to 2015. We had to end a little bit early. So I learned the language orally, just from conversation and relationships. I taught preschool level kiddos in Swahili how to read and write so they could be ready for first grade the next year. A lot of their parents were not literate, so they were already starting school behind. So that was something that I could do, and I gave them a little bit of English. I sprinkled it in there for free, no charge. And then year 3 we chose 15 stories, 8 from the Old Testament, 7 from the New, that followed a theme of Jesus Christ as our rescuer. A really cool story that I'm pretty sure I have time to tell is about that word rescuer. It's really tricky to work on telling stories in a language that we were still kind of learning. So one thing we encountered was that any even remotely religious term like grace or even the word for God, they would switch and use the national language of Swahili instead, which already has tons of churches, tons of Christians, and tons of Christian resources, so those words were more familiar. But what we really wanted was a purely Kimatumbi local dialect oral story that could be passed through cell phones and just spread widely, and that would really touch their hearts because it was in local language and there wasn't a whole lot, there weren't any biblical resources in local language. So we decided to invest more time discussing these terms and what they really, really mean, like trying to boil them down and simplify them. And one day, as we were talking about the word rescuer, which was our whole theme, we had decided on the Swahili word for rescuer, which we were all disappointed by, but the whole group agreed. These are all Muslims, Muslim Matumbi people who were helping us because there were no Christians to work with. Oh, there was one Christian. There was one Christian there. And they had decided on the Swahili word, and so we said, fine, we'll just keep praying about it. And the next day, one of the mamas came back and said, Kochopolia. Have I told this here? Yeah. She said, Kochopolia. And we were like, great, what does that mean? And she said, no, that's the word that we need to use. It's very Matumbi. And everybody started getting excited, but we who were still learning the language, we had no idea. We'd never heard of that word before. So the next kind of thing we had to ask was, okay, can you give me an example of somebody kochopoliaing something? So we'll kind of get to the root of what this word means and see if it's the correct term. And the example that the woman gave is the way that a mama hen kochopolias her chicks when they're out just roaming in the garden and a bird of prey flies over, because the chicks are completely helpless to defend themselves against this predator. So what the mama hen does is she comes and she puts herself in between the danger and these helpless creatures and kochopolias them. We're like, yeah, I think you got it. I think you got it right. And they had insight into that concept more than, you know, that was clearly a God thing. So the stories that revolved around this word kochopolia, and God was able to transform the meaning of that word. Now, kochopoli became the person who did that, and then Jesus became the kochopoli. And that was really exciting to see. So that was the first term, and after that term, when we came back in 2015, I decided to go back to school to get my degree. I hadn't finished my undergrad yet. I went back to get my undergrad in Dallas in international service with a minor in world arts because I tend to gravitate toward the artists, the song composers, and the potters, and the seamsters, and whatever else. So I got training in that, and we worked mainly out of this book by Dr. Schrag. It's called Make Arts for a Better Life, a guide to working with communities. And this book basically teaches me how to go into a community and appreciate what they have, their God-given gifts, their artistic qualities, and the ways that they express themselves, and work with those local artists to better their own community. So if the issue is an identity crisis, or if the issue is there's no peace here or a war-torn area, the Bible addresses all of that, but what they lack access to is the Bible. So that's the work that my team does, is bringing in the Bible in an oral way, because they are an oral culture. And then I encourage the artists to capture the stories and the lessons that we learn orally from God's Word, and basically put colors with them because a lot of times we remember things a lot better when we put them to song, and things spread faster when they're presented in a pleasing way. So that's something that art can do. So that's what I got trained in. And while I was in school, this was 2016 to, I just finished in August. I got my diploma like a few days ago. While I was doing that, my team was doing a whole second term in that same village, in that same area. They sponsored a few wells for fresh water. They had a really critical discipleship training institute where they, just from word of mouth, sent out an invitation to all of the Matumbi Hills, way beyond our reach, for all of the Christians anywhere to come and meet together and have discipleship training from a local Tanzanian Christian. So about 50 people came to that. This was November 2017. And they broke off into ministry teams. Matumbi people only Matumbi Christians. My team kind of hosted it. But these are Matumbi Christian groups who each selected a head, and my team meets regularly with each head to encourage them and do more oral Bible storying. And ask for updates on how outreach is going, because each team identified a handful of villages where they know there are no Christians, and they are committed to going into those areas and sharing the gospel with their own neighbors and friends in that local language which they speak fluently. So it's kind of way better, but it's going really well. What my team, they came back in 2018 after doing this work of sort of leadership development and discipleship and continued evangelism, continued relationships, and language learning. They came back just a few months ago after home assignment for the third term, which is the one that I'm joining, all that to say. So they're back, and they are currently doing an assessment of the growth of the church since those ministry teams formed and went out. And the current number, which numbers are tricky, but is 100 believers now. And there are more because Augustine hasn't gotten to all the villages yet to connect with the teams. What is really exciting is that some of the groups have gone to the fourth generation, which is basically, I had to learn this. It means that there's a group, there's the ministry team itself, and that ministry team meet regularly and pray and evangelize to people, and then meet together to learn and pray and encourage each other in their evangelism. So imagine that each, or let's say like one person from that group also has a group that they started of their own people that are meeting together and going out and evangelizing. And then imagine somebody from that group, not this guy, another person from that group has his own group. So they've done that in some areas to the fourth branch, which my team calls generations, and that's evidence of like a very alive and growing and moving church. We encourage them that you don't have to be an expert on the Bible to tell your friend. So any new thing that you learn about God, any new thing that you learn about the Bible, just who can I tell about this right away? Who can I tell today? And that's showing, especially in an oral culture, to be a really powerful evangelism tool. And it's really exciting to see. So my team is hoping that this will be our last term, this current one. We're thinking they started 2019, so 2021. And then, Lord willing, the church will be alive and moving and kind of discipling each other and growing each other and having their own leadership development. And we'll just kind of be able to slowly start phasing out of that work. But until then, I have this to work with, which I got to show the Sunday school kids before the service. This is the work of, well, God, praise God for this, but pioneer Bible translators who are working in another village, another Matumbi village, about, I don't know, like 40 kilometers away from us, a little further north. This is the book of Luke in the local language. They developed the alphabet, the writing system. This is the first written work that we know of in accurate Kimatumbi. And it's the book of Luke, and nobody that I know can read it. So now we have this bridge. We have the book of Luke in the local language, which is amazing. And we have my friends who speak the local language. It's their heart language, and they want this, but they can't read. So the next thing is like, this is what I've been training for, is the artists can come through on this and bring these words to life. We can meet together, we can learn a story, we can put it to song, we can have people present dramatic readings, we can have people paraphrasing. However we can get this out orally on cell phones, it will spread like wildfire because the need is there. The invitation is there. People want to learn about this. For the most part, there are still people who are not interested at all. But it's a real shame when there are people who do want it, and it's here now, and there's just this gap. So if you could pray for me as I get ready to go out. It's looking like January of this coming year, so just in a few months. But if you could pray for wisdom in decisions in preparations to go out. I don't know what all's going on the ground, and I want to show up as well equipped for this work that I'm walking into as possible. I feel like this degree has really helped, but sometimes you just gotta fly by the seat of your pants in places like this. You never know what's gonna happen. So prayers for wisdom would be great. Praying for the Matumbi ministry teams that are still working. Pray for their encouragement, their protection especially. It's a very spiritually active area. There's a lot of animism. So just for their protection and for their perseverance in their good work that they're doing. They are definitely a minority, so pray for them. And then for patience for me, because there's a lot that has to go right and perfectly and fit together well for me to actually leave in January. So I would appreciate prayers for that too. These are all written down on the update out there. So, and then I have a sign-up sheet if you want to keep getting more updates from me. But thank you for caring and for inviting me to come and share a few things, and God bless.
God bless you.